Hello to all our listeners, and welcome to another episode of Geeked Out. My name is Kyle.
And I'm Juan.
So, after talking about Daredevil last week, we decided that we wanted to stay in the world of comic book movies. So, this week we watched from 2003, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. This movie stars Sean Connery, Shane West, Stuart Townsend, Jason Fleming, Peter Wilson, and Richard Roxburgh. It is directed by Stephen Norrington, and it received or currently has, I should say, a 5.8 out of 10 rating on IMDb, along with a 17% critic score on
Oh
Rotten
my
Tomatoes
god,
and a 44% audience score.
that's
Those
bullshit.
are those are both way too low, in my opinion.
There's so much unwanted hate with this movie.
Well, we'll bring it to that. What is your history? When did you first see this movie? Do you remember? Did you see it in theaters?
Most likely, I'm pretty sure I've seen this in theaters. Um, yeah, it would have been right around the time when me and my father and my brother and sister were watching movies, like going to theater. We've done it for a while, and it's like our tradition. So I think we definitely watched this in theaters, and then when it came out on DVD that weekend, pretty sure we went to Blockbuster, rented the shit out of it.
Okay, well, I will say that I had never watched this movie up until this viewing. I don't know. It's just one of those that when it came out, I don't know if it just didn't really seem to spark anything in me from watching the trailers, and so I just had really no interest to go see it in theaters, and it was never really one of those things that, like you say, on those nights, those Friday or Saturday nights at Blockbuster, I never had the urge to rent this one or kind of seek this movie out in any way. I will say that I know you have told me for the past year or so to continually to watch this movie, and another good friend of mine for years has sworn by this movie. And oh yeah, you got to see it. You're gonna love it. It's this, it's that. It's so much fun. Um, and I'll be honest. I wish I would have listened. I wish I would have seen it earlier because I was thoroughly entertained through this movie. I had a great time.
See, I'm
It's
actually surprised.
surprised that I haven't seen it, or surprised that I liked it,
I was
or
surprised that
both.
you enjoyed it more than I thought you would. I thought you'd probably have very, 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 very mild enjoyment, but still with more of a negative opinion behind it. But it seems like you're overall pretty positive of the
Oh, don't
movie.
get me wrong. I mean, there are things like
Oh,
for
of
example,
course.
like there's the
But
acting isn't great,
you
but
had
but
fun
this,
with it, is what I'm
yeah,
saying.
that's
I
what I was
thought
saying.
you had more fun with it than I thought you would.
Yeah, the acting overall isn't great, but again, this isn't the
Oh
type of
no,
movie that you want great acting from.
yeah. Aside from Sean Connery, I think the level of acting is very uh sci-fi network level.
Oh, absolutely, it is. I will say, and you know what? When I looked at the cast, the apart from Sean Connery and Shane West,
Oh, no. No,
hold
no, no.
on, you don't know where I'm going because I was going to say I didn't really know. Like usually,
Oh, okay.
I'm
I
pretty
see what
good
you
at recognizing names of actors, things like that. I know Stuart Townsend. No, Stuart Townsend. I don't think I knew him as well back then,
mean.
but
Okay.
I've I know that name. But for the rest, a lot of the rest of them, they're like, oh, they look familiar. I've seen them in something, but I couldn't tell you what I had seen them in off the top of my head or what their names were. Whereas usually I'm pretty good with that. So I still remember when this movie first came out, and we'll get to the plot in a moment. But I remember that when the movie first came out, I saw the trailer, and the guy who plays Dorian Gray, who is Stuart Townsend, with that hair and the goatee. I don't know why, but when I watched the trailers back then, I swore that was Johnny Depp,
Yeah.
and I was like, what?
Think
I was
about
like,
it.
what?
I didn't think about it then, but with my rewatch, yeah, I can totally see why people would. This motherfucker is the discount Johnny Depp in this movie, for
Well,
sure.
well, back then when I saw it, I'm like, why are they not advertising Johnny Depp as a co-star? Like, I get the
Right?
marketing, I get the marketing behind Sean Connery because it's fucking James Bond, it's Sean Connery, the whole deal. But I'm like, why would you not be like, hey, another part of this team is Johnny fucking Depp. Oh, because it's not. I don't know what it was. I think it might have been the goatee. And I think in the
Yeah,
trailer, a lot of the shots of his face were so quick, like such quick cuts,
I'd have to rewatch the trailer. But
that I was
yeah,
like,
I
that's
could
got to
see
be Johnny Depp.
I could see the confusion. And he was kind of, yeah, I think that's when he was rocking the goatee and he was kind of having that that s- at least look that this character had in this movie. So yeah, I could totally understand the confusion
Yeah, because
now.
it's the same year as Pirates, as the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie.
Oh, okay, yeah, because he had long hair, so he
Yeah,
was like,
they both came out in '03, so he had the hair, the goatee, the whole look. And I'm like, that just looks like his fucking, like the Jack Sparrow character with the hair just styled instead of like dreadlocks.
which would have been great. Yeah, I think Johnny Depp would have been
He would have
great.
killed that role.
Yeah, he would have been great for sure. But this, the actor that they chose was he
I liked him for what he did.
he did good enough. Yeah, he did a good enough job to where I enjoyed it.
I mean, like I say, I'm not gonna say even Connery. I'm not gonna say anybody knocked these roles out of the park, because I mean they're
No.
which I mean it's I mean here, why don't we get into the I'll read the plot summary I have here, and then we can kind of get into that a little bit. So the movie is set in the year 1899, and you have renowned adventurer Alan Quatermain to lead a team of figures with legendary powers to battle the technological terror of a madman known as the Phantom. And the League is comprised of characters basically pulled from Victorian legendary literary um, works. You have
Yeah, this.
Captain Nemo. You have Mina Harker, which I'll get back to her in a moment. Rodney Skinner, who's the Invisible Man. Then you also have Tom Sawyer playing an American Secret Service agent,
Yeah,
along with Dorian Gray, who again I have notes on him, as well as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And so I think that was a part of what I thought was weird when when I first heard of this movie when it came out. I was like, wait, you're taking all these people from these random books that were written 100 years ago or whatever, and throwing them in an action movie? No, I'll pass.
well, it's based off a graphic novel by Alan Moore,
Yes, it is. I have that note here as well.
and the thing that they changed is they didn't have a Tom Sawyer character in the movie. Or, sorry, in the graphic novel. They added that character to the movie.
Yeah,
They
to
needed
get
an
American
American
audiences.
for whatever stupid reason.
No, I found that in my research as well, and I thought the same thing. I'm pretty sure that American audiences will go see it regardless. Like, again, we brought it up just a second ago. Pirates of the Caribbean. There ain't no Americans in that, and I'm pretty sure those movies were huge successes. So I don't know why studios do this sometimes. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. They just like to have their ideas and shoehorn a character in there, but
Yeah, I mean, it could be the producer,
yeah, I
whatever.
don't know who made the decision exactly, but
Somebody made a decision that wasn't necessary for this movie.
so when this movie came out, like I said, it was in 2003. I have the box office numbers here. So this movie, I'm gonna see if you can how close you can get to this. So the budget for this movie was $78 million, which
Okay.
that seems quite a lot for 2003. But the total worldwide was 179,265,204.
Oh my God.
Hold on. Now this movie is considered a flop. Now a lot of people when they would hear that number think, "What are you talking about? It made $100 million over its budget." What do you think it made domestically? This is why it's considered a flop, and I kind of find it amusing.
50 million.
23 million.
Oh my god.
60 or sorry, that was the domestic opening. It made 66 million domestically. So 112 million dollars was made internationally, almost double what it made in the United States.
Damn.
So I don't think adding that American character really worked.
They didn't care. They're like, nah, we're past, man. That's strange. I mean, it was 2003, so it's superhero movies weren't the thing. It was
But this movie
starting
isn't.
to. It was starting to gain traction, but it wasn't the thing audiences were going to spend their money on seeing at that time.
I will say though, this movie wasn't really. If my again, I'm just going by memory with this one, but if my memory serves me right, I don't think this movie was marketed as a superhero movie. I don't even think it was marketed as a comic book movie.
Definitely not a comic book movie, but I remember the trailers, and
It was a
I
big
think
team up, like
like a team
a
up
fantasy
super,
team up.
yeah, with like characters that, yeah, like they had shots of like the Invisible Man and the Vampire Lady. So you knew it was like a team up type movie of people's powers. But other than that, yeah, the trailer wasn't specific when it came to that, or at least the marketing,
Yeah.
as far as I
Now,
remember.
I did want to bring up a question about that. So you get these characters who they're from. Now, I haven't read. I don't think any of these. What any of these characters are based on. So I've never read 20,000 Leagues, so I have no real history with the character of Captain Nemo. I've never read Bram Stoker's Dracula. I have seen the movie though, and I will say I love that movie. But I don't remember. So Mina Harker is from Dracula. I don't remember in that story her actually becoming a vampire. Am I incorrect on that?
Uh,
Because
I have
I could be wrong,
less
but
knowledge of those things than you do. So,
well, like I said, I could be wrong, but in the movie at least I don't remember. I don't remember her actually. I know who she is, and she's like the love interest, but I can't off the top of my head remember that scene. But there are some weird shots of her in this movie. I think she played the character very well. My one big question was the whole thing with like Dracula and vampires and things like that. Is a lot of the lores they can turn into a bat. Well, at one point in this movie, she turns into about 100, and I found that really odd to do in terms of, like I say, most lore and characterization in movies. I will say movies back then. This is before the whole Vampire Diaries and Twilight and all that stuff. But I remember a lot of those movies was, oh yeah, they can turn into a bat, and then she turns into this swarm with no explanation to it whatsoever. I just kind of was like, oh, okay, because again, this is one of those movies where it helps to just kind of turn your brain off and have a good time.
yeah, and it could be a thing that they do in the graphic novel. I'm not 100% sure. I didn't really do any cross referencing, but maybe. If not, then yeah, I mean, it's kind of a unique take on the whole vampire bat scenario.
Yeah, I mean, now that you say it, you could be right because I did come across something about the graphic novel, but I I was originally under the impression that they were just taking whatever had been written about these characters in their previous works and just kind of copying and pasting what they had the abilities to do. But now, as you say that, it kind of reminded me. I had read something about um, Dorian Gray in the trivia section of this movie, and in this movie, he's referred to as ageless and invincible, whereas in the original work that he is based on, he's not invincible.
No,
And
it's just not aging.
yeah, and he also can't die by looking at the painting of himself because in the book he apparently does that throughout quite a bit.
Hmm.
So I think that was just something that they took a baseline from the.
which is cool. I think it was a cool
I liked it, absolutely. I thought it was
add-on
brilliant.
to it. I was like, that's pretty freaking interesting. I wish they would have done more, which is one of my overall problems with the movie. I just wish they did more with almost every character in this movie.
How so?
Just more imagination, more time to flesh out, or just more time with these characters so we know at least more of their backstory, more time to connect with the characters. I felt like this whole movie was kind of rushed.
Which is funny. It's funny you say that because this movie is an hour and 50 minutes. So you would think that that would be plenty of time to do that. But I feel that
They just didn't manage their time that they
I,
had.
I agree with that because there were too
Well,
many instances, like the whole buildup of finding Sean Connery's character takes a little bit of time. And then there are so many glory shots of the Nautilus, which is Captain Nemo's ship, submarine, whatever.
which is the craziest fucking ship I've ever seen.
It's really cool, but there's so many just glory shots of it coming out of the water or diving down under the water, and it, yeah, it only takes a few seconds, but if you do that so many times, all that time ends up adding up, and all of a sudden you've wasted 20 minutes of your movie just showing these shots of a ship.
Right? Or just add an extra 10, 15 minutes of backstory for these characters, so we can understand what these characters are about just a little bit more.
So I think that they're like, for example, like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, I don't think needs a ton of backstory because
No,
I
definitely.
think
I
I
wouldn't.
think everybody is familiar with who he is.
Exactly. I agree. I
But the
definitely
rest of
agree.
them, like I had heard, so again, I've never read these things. I've heard of Captain Nemo. I know the whole 20,000 Leagues and this giant squid and the whole thing, but I know nothing about him. Then you go down the line again, the Mina Harker. I've never read the book. I've seen the movie, but obviously that's probably different than the book. Dorian Gray, I had no idea who that was because I've never really heard of him before this film. And then you go to Tom Sawyer. My only history with Tom Sawyer is Jonathan Taylor Thomas in Tom and Huck.
Really?
Yeah, I never read
Jesus
Tom
Christ.
Sawyer. I never read Huck Finn. I
Good. Good, because that book is problematic as shit.
oh, it was also written however many years ago, unfortunately. But
They literally have a character named N-word Jim.
yeah, I've heard about that.
My boy. Nah, but yeah, that book, because I'm biracial. My father's African American. Seeing that book was like, because they mentioned that word, the N word, quite
I,
often,
I believe it's in both of those books quite a bit.
quite a bit. So seeing that, I believe I was in high school when we dove into that book was
Wait,
interesting.
wait a second. You read that in a class?
Yeah, I think it was like our English class.
Please tell me they did not make you guys read it out loud in class.
Perhaps it was, I'm a million years old, so it was a long time ago. I want to say that we did read it in class, but with how immature we were, I don't think it lasted long if we did.
Yeah, probably
especially
not.
especially if I was involved.
Probably not. I can't. I don't. I don't see a bunch of high school students reading that book as getting.
But I do remember being absolutely shocked by how many times that word is being mentioned in the book. I like
And
skimmed
then,
through it.
and then you're told this is a book for kids. It's like, wait a second.
I mean, yeah, it was in a different time, so it's acceptable.
It's grandfathered in, unfortunately.
Yeah, but
But yeah,
still.
my only real relation with that character is Tom and Huck. So I was like, okay, I guess JTT grew up to be Shane West. All right, I'll buy it.
Sure. Both pretty blonde dudes. Let's go with it. But yeah, I mean, was the character necessary? No. But I have my reasons why I think they added them, other than they needed an American. I think is because of this potential sequel that I guess they were teasing. They definitely were teasing.
Yeah, that
But
ending has sequel written all over it.
yeah, if they had a sequel, I think that
It would have been
even
him.
it at least as the leader for the majority of the film until, I don't want to spoil anything, but yeah, there's a character that would come back.
Yeah, yeah. It was very obvious that they were leaving this open for a sequel, and obviously they didn't make enough money, so that didn't
And the
happen. But
the last I heard, I think HBO was they were gonna do a reboot series. The last I heard was like maybe a year or two ago.
you know what? If they wanted to make this into a series, I think that would work a hell of a lot more than a film does.
Mm-hmm. Which, if it does end up happening, I'll be the first to
Oh, I'd
watch it.
watch it for sure. But it's
Watch
funny you
one.
say that. It's funny you say that with this movie being an hour and 50 minutes, and the characters aren't fleshed out, and all they had to do was add an extra 10, 15 minutes. The funny thing is, if this movie was made now, an hour and 50 minutes would probably be considered incredibly short for a movie like this.
Yeah, they probably would have made them add an extra 40 minutes.
And then it might have been that much more enjoyable because you would have gotten that extra little bit of backstory for all of those characters that you're missing in this.
Right? I think this is, now that I'm thinking about it, a series would be great for this
I think it would
series,
benefit it very much.
because you could have each episode dedicated to a certain character, it- have the build up, and then have the eventual meet up. Yeah, I think, yeah, that would be better. See, and that's why I think this movie suffers from being released in 2003, because if it was released now, it would have been more well received, and I think it would have been turned into a series instead of a movie.
Yeah, I think so as well. So some like it's I'm not going to go through this piece by piece because this whole movie is just kind of a you get all the tropes of a team action movie. You get the team together. While they're together, they're kind of attacked. Then you get the regroup scene. Then I mean there are things that I didn't really enjoy. Sorry, I did really enjoy, and I found kind of funny. One of the first notes that I took is when the guy goes and he's recruiting Sean Connery to join or to lead this team or whatever, and he finally agrees with him, and and the guy says to him, "Pack for an English summer." Sorry. And the next scene you see is they're in London and it's just pouring rain.
Yeah,
I don't know
like
why I thought that was hilarious.
downpour of rain. The first thing I wrote was the opening scene of this movie not only has a funny moment with a character holding his arm up and yelling at a fucking giant tank coming at him, thinking that's going to stop the tank and being crushed.
Oh, it was the Tiananmen Square scene, yeah.
But the the opening of this movie kind of reminds me of the opening of the first Captain America movie with Chris Evans, with
You're
the
talking.
tank. Yeah, with the tank coming in and barging in, and then the villain coming out and having a confrontation with like a scientist, and that character wanting world domination. It had a lot of similarities.
Yeah, I could see that absolutely.
So yeah, that was just my notes, the first notes I had for this movie.
I will also say that the design for the Phantom character I thought was really good. I thought he looked really cool with the iron type mask on his head, and like
Yeah,
half his face is all scarred underneath
yeah.
with the long hair.
Does
I
it
thought he looked really good.
did it remind you of anything?
Honestly, the first thing that I thought of when I saw the mask, it reminded me of Russell Crowe's helmet in Gladiator.
I think they were trying to allure like this was the Phantom from the Phantom of the Opera. I could be
Yeah,
wrong.
no, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I didn't connect that. I think a lot of that is because this quote unquote Phantom's mask was it covered the top half of his face, whereas the Phantom of the Opera is kind of just a side. So I didn't kind of connect those, but yeah, now that you say that, absolutely, it seemed like that.
If they weren't going for that, it fits rather damn well.
Yeah, it does.
It seems too well. But yeah, no, I appreciated the villain, even though it didn't feel like a Thanos level like threat, which it really shouldn't, but kind of almost because he's the big bad trying to take over the world. I I appreciated it, even though it wasn't super threatening.
Yeah, I never got the impression that he was, like you say, this big bad. Like, yeah, he's the bad guy, but it's not. It is what it is type thing. It's no bigger than any other movie bad guy type thing.
Yeah, kind of on the level of like a Bond villain.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that's the part of the problem is nowadays we've got all of these superhero movies from whether it be Marvel, DC, whatever. Everything is about the world ending and the universe, and everything seems so massive that it's hard to look at movies like this that are just you're fighting against just a person. You know what I mean? It seems too small, which is kind of unfortunate.
Exactly. And like this villain was he wanted to, start the first world war, which had I liked because it kind of ties to historical elements, and I kind of just
Yeah, because
enjoy
only
the
I think it was 15 years later in 1914 is when the First World War started. So
right. And I like you notice how after the attack on the opening scene, they have like this montage of these newspaper articles,
I
and
love when movies do that.
one was German, says it's not us
Yeah, I did like
yet,
that.
not yet, motherfuckers, not yet.
Yeah,
Give it a few
I
more
did
years.
like that.
But yeah, no, yeah, I appreciated how they were trying to have some type of, and that again, that could have just been how the comic book tone was, where it was connecting real world things to the overall plot.
Yeah, and like I say, I've never read the comic or the graphic novel or anything like that, so I don't know how close this adaptation is to it. Um, but I will say some of the other stuff that I have here is I did like with all these characters being taken from literary works throughout the years. I did like that. Just one little shot or little thing is when they get um, once they're all together and they have to go and I think it's they're going to pick up or convince Dorian Gray, not pick him up, but they're trying to go meet up with him to convince him. Captain Nemo has like a limo driver, and when you see him, he says, "Call me Ishmael," which I liked because that's I've never. It's the first line of the book Moby Dick, so it's just another little literary reference thrown in there, which I kind of liked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you're a fan of, or at least read those books, you'll appreciate those little things.
I've tried. That book is a slog to get through.
Yeah, I'd have to listen to somebody talk about it because I don't think I could. My ADHD would not permit myself to
I've
sit
tried a
through.
few times, and Moby Dick is a hard one to get through.
Yeah, I mean, it's a book from a different time when people could tolerate such long books, I guess.
Yeah,
But,
I know what you mean.
but it's something that, yeah, I feel like I should at least attempt to read.
Yeah, I mean it is a classic for a reason, but like I said, I've tried enough times. I don't think I'll be venturing back to that. Some of the other things that I have here, I thought so. So last week we watched Daredevil, which also came out in 2003, and I couldn't believe the difference in the CGI special effects. I mean, I mean, if any, for anybody who listened to our episode from last week, you know what we think of the special effects that were in that movie. I thought the CGI in this movie was great, and I thought it actually held up quite well.
I think
Uh,
part of the reason is that they had a lot of practical, or at least, yeah, they meshed the practical with the CG
yeah,
much
whereas Daredevil
better than
relied
Daredevil.
solely on CGI.
Yeah, and then just a lot of the Daredevil acrobats in that movie. At that time was just very hard to do the CG and make it look believable.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. One of the things that I really liked actually was the effect of the Invisible Man. I thought it looked pretty seamless, like when you would see, um, whether it be like a piece of paper or a book that he was supposed to be holding, and it's just kind of floating there, or when he goes to put on his big leather trench coat before he starts painting his face, it looks really convincing,
Yeah.
with just a coat hanging in midair, and I thought it looked really cool. And as I remember watching it again with the Daredevil thing, I'm going, how did these two movies come out in the same year? Although, when I thought about it even more since last week, um, Daredevil was '03 with those terrible CGI effects, but Lord of the Rings was what, 2001?
One.
And
Yeah.
those, to
One.
me, those special effects still hold up today for the most part.
Yeah, and it all depends on the team behind it. I know that was it ILM was top dog, but at that time they definitely had a lot of up and coming stu not studios but companies that were trying to, you know, get their foot in the door. Don't know if those were the companies that were involved in these movies, but you could tell ILM didn't touch Daredevil.
Yeah, no, I thought this was really cool. And even then, when you get down to things like, you have the Jekyll and Hyde. Originally, when you meet him, he's Mr. Hyde, and he goes back down to Dr. Jekyll. And both the transition from when he goes from Jekyll to Hyde and vice versa, I thought they looked really good, but at the same time, I just thought it looked like straight body horror
It was creative
in
because
the
they
in the
didn't
best way.
they didn't depend on CG to do the whole transformation. They kind of relied on cuts, edits, and practicality because a lot of it was practical effects.
I say I think a lot of it, until he starts to grow in size, when you just start to see his face change, that has to just be makeup.
Yeah, and yeah, it did definitely did have like a barred body horror element to it because the way they filmed it seemed like, yeah, he is going through a bit of pain while he's transforming. I feel like they were letting you know through. just how they filmed it.
Yeah, no, I thought, sorry, I thought it came across really cool. So now, like Juan had said, throughout this movie, Phantom is trying to create the first, or create a world war, what would have been the First World War. And you get a sense throughout as they go that there's somebody on this team or in this league that is a double agent and is kind of working for Phantom, and everybody starts talking about it, and everybody is along the general consensus that the person who's kind of the traitor within their midst is Skinner, who is the Invisible Man. And as an audience member, you think that for quite a bit of this, because now, not to use this as a pun, but his character just disappears for a good portion of this movie.
And he is the thief, right? He is known to be a thief. That's why he became the Invisible Man in this movie. Because in the book, the Invisible Man, he was created by a scientist, and the person that became the Invisible Man was a scientist. And I think in this movie, he stole the formula because, being an invisible thief does have his benefits. And he couldn't change back, which is why he's on the team. So he could, if he plays his role right, then they will have apparently they would come up with a cure for him.
Is that what it was? I thought it was just that he would get a pardon for what he had done.
No, I think they promised.
I might have missed that.
I think they made an empty promise that they could cure him.
Yeah, I might have had my head down taking notes or something, but okay, that makes sense, because you would think, why would a thief just kind of like the way his character is portrayed, like why would he do that? But so it makes sense. Like, yeah, of course that would be who the guy who is spying on them.
Yeah, he's a thief, of course.
And
he's
working for the bad guy. But it's then revealed that the person who is actually spying on them for Phantom is Dorian Gray, and of course everybody is upset and pissed about this. Most of all, I think Mina, because the two of them kind of had this relationship in the past that they allude to, and they had a little bit of it here, and they realized that. Sorry, go ahead.
Keep going. I'll finish.
Well, I was going to say the reason that they realized that before he kind of took off, they say that he's stolen something from all of them, where he took basically like blood from all of them somehow, whether it be accidental or like he took, well, not all of them, I shouldn't say that. He took like Captain Nemo's scientists, and in this, Captain Nemo is an inventor as well as
took blood from the vampire lady. He took one of the changing chemicals for Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, and then he
cut or he scratched the Invisible Man, and I'm guessing took his blood as well.
Yeah.
And the reason is he's taken all of this back to Phantom, and they're trying to replicate it. So they're taking Nemo scientists, and they're going to make their own fleet of these Nautilus ships, and then they're developing the invisibility serum, they're developing the Mr. Hyde serum, and then I'm guessing they're just taking Mina's blood and turning people into vampires.
And it's also, you're missing the whole reveal of there's a character in the beginning of the movie that is, I guess, the person that puts the team together.
Well, we can go ahead and talk about that now. Go for it.
Because in that scene where, it's revealed that he's the traitor, it's also at least revealed that this character who, again, puts the team together, who is referred to as M, is revealed to be the Phantom himself. So the guy that puts the team together was also the bad guy, the Phantom, all along.
And it's funny, as I was going through that, and when I went to say the Phantom, I almost just instinctively said M, and then in my head I went, nope, no one's going to know what you're talking about. unless they've seen the movie.
Which is kind of interesting because I think that's the M is a reference to M from James Bond.
I thought the same thing.
Which is interesting because Sean Connery, the original Bond, or the second Bond, I think there was a person that played it before him. But yeah, I just thought that was interesting.
I thought the same thing. So they later reveal who M actually is, but when they're doing the recruiting scene and he's going to Sean Connery and he's like, my name, or just call me M. I kind of went like, oh, so it's like we've gone back in time now, and Sean Connery's answering to fucking M.
Yeah, I I don't know if it. I don't think this character is in the comics at all. But if it is, it's another tie to another literary character.
Well, I mean, later in the film, they refer to him. Sean Connery does. It's like he's figured it out. I don't know how he's figured it out because it doesn't show any kind of him trying to do this or him doing any kind of research or anything like that. But he refers to him because the only you hear at one point when there's a confrontation between Sean Connery and Phantom as he's kind of chasing him, one of his henchmen yells James as Phantom is running away. And I wrote a note because I'm like, that. So obviously he's somebody other than just this villain type thing. And then in one of the final confrontations, Sean Connery calls him James Moriarty. Now, obviously, for anybody who has ever read or watched anything to do with Sherlock Holmes, Professor James Moriarty is Sherlock Holmes's arch nemesis, and he's a brilliant mind, and he basically rivals Sherlock on every level. And they basically confirm it in the movie because he says, and he even references Sherlock Holmes. He says James Moriarty died at Reichenbach Falls, which is a very famous scene in a Sherlock Holmes novel. And I like that because I'm a big Sherlock Holmes fan myself, and I thought that was a cool kind of tie-in. And I still think that they used the term of M. I think they did it because it was Sean Connery and the whole James Bond thing. At least I like to think that was why it was. But I did like the reveal that he's actually Professor Moriarty, and it makes sense that somebody of that level of intellect, at least the way he was always written, would come up with a plan like this.
Mm-hmm. Which it would have been an interesting sequel if they would have brought in Sherlock Holmes. Like the potential for a sequel, or at least if they could at least capture some of this and put it into a series. Yeah, man. I think the potential for this is much bigger than what we got.
Yeah, I think, like you say, I think there absolutely is potential for this, because if you want to keep using the same type of literary characters from Victorian times or things like that, there's no shortage of them. And again, like they changed the whole what Dorian Gray's abilities are and things like that. You can just take the name and just kind of tweak their powers or tweak what they can do just a little bit to make it your own. I think that would be a really cool idea. And in a series, I think it would work very well. And I'd be really interested in watching that personally. Whether or not it ever actually is going to happen, I have no idea.
But yeah, man, they would be dumb not to.
At least try. I mean, they're making fucking everything else nowadays. Why can't they make that?
Exactly. And it's a way to have a MCU, if done right. You could have a universe that is talked about like the MCU or the DCU.
Well, nobody wants to be talked about like the DCU.
I mean, when it comes to I mean, hopefully
I
the
get what
new
you're saying.
DC, I mean, talked about in the sense of a successful franchise, you know. But yeah, no, I feel like this movie should have been released around now because yeah, people just didn't know what to do with it in 2003.
No, and I think it suffered from the same thing that a lot of other I guess comic related things suffer from that aren't the big names. I mean, obviously things like Spider-Man, X-Men, Batman, all those things, they've already got such huge followings, but then you look at some of these other movies that were based on comic book movies that are really good movies, but they just didn't get um,
The
they did
recognition,
yeah, they didn't get the
traction.
recognition. They weren't as popular with the general public as some of those other movies were, and it's kind of sad because there were so many of them that were really good to watch, like this one, and people just didn't see it because they didn't, like you said, they didn't know what to do with it. Like I recently, just because of this, because I was like, oh, this is based on a comic. I wonder. I just typed in comic book movies on Google, and the list that came up just kind of blew my mind. Like I didn't know that so many of these were based on comic books. But I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
that's neither here nor there because I mean, when you think of comic book, you think superhero or things like that. That there are many comic books out there that have nothing to do with superheroes.
yeah. You wouldn't think Road to Petition is a freaking comic book movie, but it is technically.
I didn't know that. Road to
It
Perdition is
is
a comic book movie.
the one with Tom Hanks.
I've never seen it, but yeah, that would be the Road to Perdition.
Yeah, comic book movie.
Huh. That's
Crazy, right?
yeah. I'm kind of
Wouldn't think it is, but it is.
yeah. And I mean, the problem is now if people want to get a movie like this made, I think with the potential of where this could go with sequels and sorry, sequels or building, like you say, some kind of a universe. I think it would have to be planned out and done the right way. And I don't know if the attention span of a lot of moviegoers would be enough to do this story in a movie series. That's why I like you and I were saying, do this like as a Netflix or an Amazon show. I think it would make a lot more sense because, like you
Yeah,
said, then you can take a full episode or half an episode and flesh out each character and give them a real rich backstory that they can fall back on or refer to if needed, as opposed to just we're going to do this with the character and we're going to hope that nobody questions it just because they don't know they don't really they won't know much about them, at least the general public. Like I said, the whole Dorian Gray thing, they're like he's ageless and indestructible, and I'm like, okay, I don't know who he is, so I'm just going to take your word for it and not question it.
exactly. I mean, if it would 100% benefit from a series just because the amount of characters and backstories and being fleshed out and whatnot. Um, if you were to do it in one movie, you would need a director with a lot of imagination
Or a
and
long runtime.
exactly that craft in a movie that has very little fat to it that does get a little like at least a piece of the backstory and you managed all of that in a a 2 hour and a half or a decent length movie.
Yeah. Now, another thing about about this film, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the whole thing that was surrounding the release of, not release, but the aftermath of this movie. As many people know, this was the last live action film that Sean Connery appeared in.
Mm.
Apparently, he had such a poor experience on the set during the filming of this movie that he decided to just walk away. He decided to just walk away and retire after this film, which I don't know. I mean, I can't speak for what he went through on the set or anything like that, but that to me is really unfortunate because I enjoyed the movie. Um, I wouldn't think it would have been that bad of a time, but again, I wasn't there. Um, I don't know if um, his bad experience had anything to do with um, the reception of the film, or if it was just what happened behind the cameras. But yeah, this is something that's been talked about for many years, and I think in the later years, this is what steered a lot of people away from this movie.
Yeah. I mean, my personal theory is that he was in I think he was in his 70s.
He was 73 when it came out, so he would have been. They probably filmed it in '02, so he would have been 72 around that time.
So yeah, I mean, he before this movie, he turned down the role of Gandalf in Lord of the Rings, and I think he also turned down the role of Morpheus in The Matrix just
I
because he didn't understand the script.
heard about
So
the Morpheus one. I did not know he turned out Gandalf.
yeah, yeah, they offered that to him, and his response to I believe both of them was like he just didn't understand. Like
Well, I will say this: as much as I love Sean Connery, I will have to thank him for turning down Gandalf because Sir Ian McKellen, is the Gandalf that we needed and the Gandalf that we deserved.
oh yeah, he killed that role, but I think it's just the whole s- evolution of the movie industry was getting too much for him that he just didn't know,
How to fit into it.
and he just didn't care. He didn't care to fit into it. So he just, he decided to quit.
And you know what? He didn't really have to fit in. He had been doing, like it says here, he had been doing this, acting in movies for 52 years when this
And I,
happened.
yeah, and I think if the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen made more money and it was more successful, he would have been open to be in a sequel. But I just think because he turned down two movies that were super successful, and the one that he chose wasn't successful at all, wasn't also a contributing factor of his retirement.
It could have been because, yeah, this movie came out in '03 and he finally made that official decision to retire in '06. So the return could have been a factor in it.
Yeah, I mean that's just my personal opinion theory
Well,
on
I mean,
why he made the overall decision.
even if you look at like if he would have done, like you say, had they made the sequel, it could have been something as simple as, like, he doesn't like, if he had decided, you know what, I'm done. I've done this for over half a century. Like, I've had enough of acting, and they were like, "Oh, we want to do a sequel." And even if it was something where he was, because it, I mean, we'll get into the ending of this movie in a little bit, but he could have come back for like well, even if like a flashback scene or even just a little bit role, like a little, almost like a cameo, just to say that he was there and he came back for it. I'm sure he would have done it. I don't know if he would have signed on to do another full movie, but
No, but I think that's what the movie was teasing. It was teasing that he was going to be in it for a little bit, and that um, Tom Sawyer character was going to be the face or the leader of the team, with Sean Connery coming back for again a brief role.
yeah. Because now, I mean, we might as well talk about it now. Spoiler alert. So the ending of this movie is the final. There's a final face to face with Moriarty or M or Phantom or whatever you want to call him, and Sean Connery's character as well as Shane West's character Tom Sawyer. And he okay, I literally just finished watching this earlier today, and I've already forgotten what M does. Does he shoot him, or does he throw a knife
At who?
to Sean Connery? I believe he shoots him.
Yeah, I think he does shoot him.
Yeah,
Shoots him.
he shoots him in the stomach or in the gut, whatever. And then, because again, right in that scene, there's a whole passing of the torch, because he's been trying to teach Tom Sawyer basically how to be a sniper, like shoot long distances, even with the old rifles that they had back then, which you can't shoot. You can't shoot the way, from everything that I've seen, I don't think those weapons shoot at those distances with any kind of accuracy. But again, this is a movie and it's a comic book movie, so.
And you're not Sean Connery.
Very true.
I believe that dude could shoot that far.
Do you believe Shane West could? Because he does.
But because he had Sean Connery showing him how to do it.
Sure. But anyway, so like I say, that's the ending, is he gets shot, and then Tom Sawyer has to take the shot and gun down Moriarty. And spoiler alert, he's successful. But as that's happening, Sean Connery succumbs to the gunshot and he dies. And the last scene of the movie is you're back in Kenya, which is where he was recruited from in the first place, in Africa. And when they left there the first time, they show a grave, and the cross on the grave says Quartermain. So they later basically say that it was his wife. I don't know if in the beginning you're supposed.
It was his son.
Was it son? Okay. See again. I didn't catch that. I thought it was his wife.
It was his son.
Did they say that? Did I fucking miss this? Was I taking notes again and I missed this?
Yeah, he mentions it for sure, especially when he's sniping with Shane West.
Oh, when they're on the boat?
Because remember when he just leaves out of nowhere?
Oh my God, you're right. Did you?
Yeah,
because he said, "Did you teach your son how to shoot like this?" And he just walks away.
He fucking just walks away. That shit was hilarious. He's like, nah.
Yeah, you're right. I completely spaced on that.
And another thing, which was like almost a foreshadowing, is he kind of just says it briefly or just in passing to the guy that's recruiting him, that he mentions that Africa would not let him die, which has credence to the ending of this movie.
Yeah, so again, the ending is, so I guess it's his son. But the ending is the whole league is basically surrounding. They've buried him right next to his son, and Shane West takes the rifle and places it on top of his grave. And I don't know what to describe this next character as.
He's an African,
like a shaman or
a priest
or like something like that. And he starts doing this ritual where that involves fire and things like this, and all of a sudden a big lightning storm starts to happen, and then the camera zooms in on from below, like from ground level, and it's kind of pointing up over the mound of dirt of his grave and where the rifle sits. And it looks for a split second like lightning almost like strikes the rifle, and then the screen goes black, and that's the ending of the movie. So obviously that is like, oh, maybe he'll come back, because then that's now a sequel setup, which again, because this movie bombed, they never ended up getting around to make. But like we said, I don't know if Connery would have come back for a second film,
If he would have, again, it would not have been.
a full role.
No, no, he would not have spent much time on that set. He would have done his obligation and got the fuck out of there.
Yeah. I will say there, so this is going to be like a negative wrapped in a positive for this movie. I thought a lot of the fight scenes, like the hand-to-hand combat fight scenes, were done really well. Um, I really enjoyed the fact that Captain Nemo is kind of like a fucking ninja with all the martial arts that he
This motherfucker is
imposes.
Batman. I think he's Batman. This motherfucker invented an automobile. Guy's got a ship. That's crazy.
We have to
Huge.
talk about that ship in a minute.
This motherfucker invented GPS. This guy's crazy. I wish we had more of this version of Captain. That's one of my biggest gripes, is that we didn't get as much time as I think we should have gotten with this Captain Nemo character. He was so fascinating.
I thought he was really cool.
He was so fascinating, and we got nothing other than him just being a tight character.
Well, the way he's portrayed is like, especially on the boat, he's so
like a Batman almost.
Well, not even that, but it's almost like he's just quiet, and it's like he just gives orders like to his people, and that's all he really does. And then even when they're in like almost like, I guess I'm gonna call it a league meeting, he just kind of gives like quick little answers. But then when shit hits the fan, dude just goes straight into every martial art. He's got a fucking sword, like
fucking everybody up.
He's doing backflips and spin kicks, and it's fucking crazy to see it, that like transition. And then the fight ends and he just goes right back to being the same as he was, and it's like, okay, it's just a switch that flips. I get it. I see you.
Right? Not gonna address that. Okay, cool.
I will say though, so now I'm gonna bring the negative part in. There were a lot of scenes in this movie in terms of like the hand-to-hand and all that stuff where I get that it's because of his age, but you need to do a better job getting a stunt double that doesn't look 50 years younger than Sean Connery.
He's moving so fast. Yeah. When the stunt double is moving so fast and the actual actor is moving so slow, it takes you completely out of it. You know that's a stunt double. It's like, come on, man.
Well, and there's even a couple scenes where like if you were to pause it or kind of slow it down, you could tell obviously like even the face isn't Sean Connery. And there was one that I swear it looked like as he was doing some kind of a spin, because obviously Sean Connery has like the gray white hair that he's very known for in the later stages of his career.
Yeah, salt pepper.
But it almost looks like in one scene the guy's like I said, I don't know if he's spinning or doing a flip or whatever it is. But for a split second, it looks like as he's doing that motion, the wig is like lifted, and his hair is just jet black.
Oh no.
I don't remember the specific part, but I noticed it and went, "What the fuck?" And then I just couldn't stop laughing.
I could believe that. I could believe that.
I mean, that happens. That happens in movies all the time.
Exactly.
But every time it does, it still gets me. I still laugh at it.
Yeah, and it's always usually, at least, it's more predominant when it's older actors trying to have the capabilities of somebody who's, much younger. Because you have to use a younger stunt double, and it's obvious.
Well, it's funny though. Every time I see that, every time I see it in a movie, I'm like, all I can think about is the editor, because when they shoot scenes, I can't imagine that a director is going to sit there and go frame by frame as they're like looking at the dailies every day type thing. But I can just
Some
imagine the
do.
edit. Pardon?
Some do. Some are
Some.
very anal, man,
I
about
can't
those
imagine
things.
Stephen Norrington did that.
Nah, I don't think so either. In this
But I
case.
just in any of those movies, I just envision the director or the editor being there in the editing bay, and they're going through it, and they're like, "Hey, you guys seeing this? Yeah, but if we tell the director we're gonna have to bring everybody back, go do reshoots, do this whole thing, fuck it, let's just do it and just say we didn't catch it."
Yeah, I believe it.
And it just makes me laugh. Like, and I get it because there's nothing you can do about it, but I don't know. I've always found it so amusing. It's like when one of my I don't think guilty pleasures is the right word, but one of the things I get like a lot of joy out of is finding continuity errors in movies or things like that. Or oh, in this scene they're holding a glass in their right hand, and then they just switch camera angles and they're holding it in their left hand, and just
Oh yeah.
stuff like that. I don't know why. I just find it really funny when I notice them, and I know that uh, I've people that I've watched things with in the past, and I'll bring it up. They're like, "Yeah, we don't care," and I'm like, "Isn't it? It's fucking hilarious." I don't know why. Like, I always get a kick out of it.
Yeah. Um, I've been interested in that for so long. Um, that there was a specific website that specializes in those things that I've been going to since I was in high school. So
Well,
yeah, I'm right up.
that's the way. That's the site that you turned me on to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you realize how many of those mistakes are in movies, and then you start paying attention, and then you start to catch it more and more.
Well, the one that I always thought was the worst. It's not even a movie. I'm a big fan of the show Friends, and there are so many. But again, that's a TV show. There's 20 some episodes a year, 10 seasons. Like those things are going to happen, but I still get a kick every time I see it.
Hmm. Yeah, it's always funny seeing that. Like when my favorite is when like it's a person's shirt is wet because you every time they cut to something else and then cut back to the shirt, it's always the wet stain is always bigger or smaller or in a different spot
Or they're completely dry as a bone. It goes
or dry.
the other way too.
It's funny.
They
Yeah,
get they get out of the ocean. Their hair is soaking wet. The camera goes to a different character, and then it comes back, and their hair is bone dry.
mhm.
The other one that I like, the other movie trope that I've always found really amusing, is whether it be a guy or a girl, the on the run haircut. The one where it's like they just stop and just take a knife or scissors and just cut their own hair so that they're not recognizable. And in the next scene, it looks like they just went to a salon for a 3 hour appointment, and their
Mm.
hair is just flawless. And it's like, yeah, you cut your own hair in a gas station bathroom. Bullshit.
Yeah, yeah. There's a bunch of different tropes in movies that kind of rub me the wrong way. So
See, those
yeah,
ones I wouldn't say those ones that I've mentioned rub me the wrong way. I actually find them, not that I look forward to them, but I find them amusing.
one of my yeah, and when it comes to those tropes, one of my favorite ones is the guy that in the war movie that pulls out a picture of like their wife or girlfriend and talks about life after the war because 150% this motherfucker is going to die within the next scene of said movie.
Dude, you want to know what the worst one for that is? Is the first Transformers movie. They run through like, almost every military war, I'm away from home trope, in one scene. It's when you first see Tyrese and Josh Duhamel in like Afghanistan, and it's the whole crew, and
Yeah.
one of them's talking about
Yeah.
I'm gonna go to a Red Sox game and eat a hot dog and drink a beer. One guy's talking about I'm gonna go have my mom's gonna make me my favorite meal. Another guy's talking about his wife
Mm.
had a baby. I'm gonna go meet my baby girl
Mm.
for the first time. I'm like, this whole
Damn.
fucking scene is just every single soldier away from home during a war trope all wrapped up into one scene. And I love that. I think it's hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the one where I know for a fact what's going to happen to that character.
Yeah, and then again in that movie, within like 5 minutes, they get attacked by the big scorpion
Scorpion.
transformer. And it's like, yep, there it is.
Yeah. Yeah. They ain't making back. They ain't gonna be in Transformer 2.
Thank you, Chris Tucker.
But yeah.
So I think that that pretty much wraps it up. I don't think I have really anything else left for this film. I don't know about if you have any other
Uh
notes you want to
the only
bring
thing I
up.
want to bring up is I wish Marvel would have copied how the dynamic between Mr. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in this movie. Because you never had, because I'm a huge Hulk fan. And in the comic books, there's always a duality between Hulk and Bruce Banner. They have interactions with each other. They do talk to each other, which none of the movies even hint at. But this,
You get it a little bit in Infinity War, but nothing before that.
no. And in this movie, they kind of have that back and forth with each other through reflections. Something I wish Marvel would have copied, because that is a reflection of how they're treated in the comics. And I highly appreciate how they did it with this movie.
Well, it's funny because this movie might. I actually, now that you bring that up, I'm glad you brought that up because I did have one more note about that character. So I never read Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I don't know. Have you read that, or do you know a lot about that story?
Not the original.
Okay.
There's been many things based off of it and homages and remakes,
Well, because
but I don't know the original.
I'm curious if they have that type of relationship in that story as well. Whereas
I don't
where they're
think
like
so.
almost like a split personality where they do talk to one another.
I'm not too sure, if I'm being honest. And it could have just been a thing that they took from the graphic novel. It could have been a brainchild of Alan Moore, a he's a literary genius onto himself in at least in the comic book world.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
it could have just been something that he could cooked up.
Well, I'm also curious so because I don't know about you, but I know you're a huge Spider-Man fan, as am I. But I got a lot of Green Goblin vibes from the first Sam Raimi with the Willem Dafoe. The whole what I think is one of the best scenes in that entire movie is with the him talking to himself in the mirror. I
Oh,
got
the
a
whole golem.
Yeah, I got a lot of vibes of that with this. So I was kind of curious whether, because like you say, if they just did that for the comic, because I know Spider-Man came out a year before this. So as you were saying that, it kind of got me wondering, like, did maybe if it was in the comic first, did Sam Raimi read the comic and do that for Green Goblin, or did maybe they see Spider-Man and use that kind of um, that character trait for Jekyll and Hyde in this, or it could just be a coincidence. I really have no
Yeah,
idea. I'm
could have
not
just
trying to
been.
assume, but
Yeah, it could have been just parallel thinking.
I thought it was kind of cool though to see them kind of talking to each other, and whereas like the Green Goblin one is almost like obviously one is like villainous and one is kind of innocent, whereas this is
Mhm.
when Mr. Hyde is talking to Jekyll, he's saying like, no, we can do this. Like you have to change. Where it's almost like he's trying to help him as opposed to like, yeah, let's go murder these people. Like,
Yeah, he doesn't give a fuck. You could tell that Mr. Hyde he's got a little bit of Dr. Jekyll's humanity, I guess, and he's not a total villain.
he's also
Dr.
not just a
Jekyll,
hulking monster with no real
yeah,
thoughts.
exactly. Like he definitely doesn't give a fuck, but he does give a fuck. If you can understand that.
Yeah. So yeah, so like I say, if that's all, like I say, I'm through my notes, and I don't really have much else to say. So I think if
No?
you're ready, I think we'll move on to closing thoughts. I think I'll let you go first. You're much more versed in this movie, having seen it many more times than I.
Oh yeah. I've definitely watched this movie every couple years just because it's like the epitome of a fun dumb movie. And yeah, man. I I liked it then. I still like it now. I think it still holds up. I think it holds up better now that we're in a superhero dominant in media world.
Too many of
Um,
them. I'll say it. Too many. That's for another
yeah,
time.
too many mediocre right now. But I think the quantity is outweighing the quantity. But yeah, I don't really agree with how most of the reception of this movie is. I think it's a little bit better. My rating, like if I were to give it one, I'd give it personally. I'd give it I'm flirting between a 6.5 and a 7,
Okay.
but I'm gonna give it a 7 just because I had probably more fun with it than most people or the average person.
Okay. So for me, being that I hadn't seen this movie previously, I'll say that I was very surprised at how much I really did enjoy it. I wasn't expecting that. But you're right. It is just one of those dumb action movies that you can kind of flip that switch, turn your brain off, and just have fun with it. Um, I thought the action set pieces were done quite well, and the fight choreography was good. And as I've said before, the visual effects I thought were pretty good for being a 21-year-old movie. Um, but all that being said, I would definitely recommend this movie to anybody. It's like I say, this isn't a movie that you're going to expect phenomenal acting from or anything like that, but it's just a great action movie that just a lot of easy to have fun with. And I'm actually going to agree with you, and I'm going to give this a solid 7 out of 10.
Oh shit!
So I really enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would.
I'm surprised.
I'm surprised, especially considering even though I had never seen it, I kind of dogged on this film for years. Like I would joke with a buddy of mine, like, "No, there's no way that's good. Like you're so full of shit," type thing. But no, this movie really surprised me, and I'm glad that I watched it.
Yeah, I'm glad that you did, man. I'm glad that you actually enjoyed it, and it's a movie that you can add to the repertoire.
Oh, it'll definitely be. I will definitely watch it again. How soon will I watch it again? I have no idea, but it will be something that I will watch more than once for sure.
Oh,
So,
oh.
sorry, did you have
I
something
just no,
else
I
to
just want
add?
no. It's awesome. That's awesome. I kind of I put a notch in all the movies that I recommend people that they end up liking. It's
Yeah,
another one.
that's a
It's another
good
one on my
feeling when
belt.
you it's a good feeling when you tell somebody about something that you really like, and then they come back and they're, yeah, you're right. I never thought of that. Like, but no, absolutely. I'm glad that you recommended this, and I'm glad we did it for this show.
And if
So,
you like this recommendation, you're gonna definitely like next week's movie that you're gonna review. We
well,
will.
like I say, now that'll basically wrap up the discussion for this film. And as always, if you guys want to get in touch with us, you can follow us on X at geeked_podcast with a capital G. We're also on Instagram at geekedoutpod, or you can send us an email at geekedoutpod@gmail.com. And before we get out of here, we want to thank everybody out there for listening and subscribing. And we'll be back next week to, as Juan said, we're going to watch another film that I have never seen. We're going back to 2012, and we're going to watch Dread.
Yeah.
I am actually quite excited to watch this movie. It's another one that I haven't seen, but again, I've heard nothing but good things about. So join us next week for Dread, and as always, don't forget to follow and give us a rate and review. And we'll talk to you guys next week. Take care.
Peace.